Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver in 1976. Now, finally, I'm doing my Scorsese director series. Of course, on my channel I've got quite a few director series open now, ongoing. And this is one of the ones that I was looking forward to doing the most. At the beginning of this year I said I would watch all of his films, even if some of the ones I've seen before many times. I would watch them all this year, review them all, and do a ranking. And January I did start doing this. Of course, I've not reviewed any yet, and there'll be some that I'm not going to rewatch again this year because I've already seen them. But this one, Taxi Driver, I did see in January, and I've just rewatched it again in order to review it. And yeah, I've watched this quite a lot. I've seen it many times now, more than 10 times at least. Scorsese, a bit of backstory. One of my very favourite directors. I think he's one of the masters of cinema. There's only one film I really do not like of his, and another one I didn't like too much, but I didn't hate. But, this guy really defined, from the age of 11 onwards. Really, I think that was the first time I saw, the films like Goodfellas and Raging Bull and stuff. Taxi Driver. I did see Gangs of New York a lot earlier than that. I was a kid, or not really quite a young kid when I watched that. And yeah, Taxi Driver, when I first saw it, could not really believe what I saw. It was wonderful. I thought it was just perfect, really. And just stunning, it put me in a trance. Just an addictive piece of storytelling, really. And Robert De Niro was always my favourite actor, growing up, and this is one of his absolute finest performances. So here's a steelbook. I think this is quite a limited one now. I got it. It's one of the first Blu-rays I got, actually. Just amazing, really. Yes, and Taxi Driver, along with Goodfellas, it's his most popular film. If you look on IMDb and stuff, Goodfellas is way beyond any of them. But really, if you take into account critics and film buffs and general public, these are the two films that people, they're kind of up and down. More critics actually more lean towards Taxi Driver, Raging Bull at times as well. But Taxi Driver is really, it's one of the most beloved films you could say of all time. And it's an indie film, of course, 1976, and Mean Streets I think is Scorsese's first masterpiece that I've seen. But Taxi Driver is the one that really made him one of the absolute best directors. And of course, as well, by this time, De Niro had been in quite a few films. Godfather Part 2, where he gives one of the absolute greatest performances ever. I still think that's a better performance than this. But this is probably one of the 20 best performances I've ever seen as well. It's just perfect, unbelievable acting. And, by this point, De Niro was a massive, phenomenon, really. Everyone sort of, wanted to have him in their films and stuff. Even Bertolucci would work with. And yeah, just this film, if you've not seen it, a lot of people have seen it. If you've not seen it, it's basically Vietnam vet, kind of becoming a taxi driver, and it deals with isolation, loneliness, and just kind of over the course of the film, De Niro's character basically just becomes more and more unhinged, and leads to a pretty big finale, and it's got themes of redemption in there as well, and just exploring crime and everything, and just obsession as well, and stuff, and fantasies and everything. Of course, Paul Schrader wrote the script, and Scorsese worked closely. The script is one of the best in cinema for me. It's absolutely flawless, and just the way that this was brought to the screen is just perfect. I cannot believe how good Scorsese's direction is in this film. I've seen it over 10 times, of course. Scorsese would kind of would talk about this film. He always thought films are kind of like dreams, and this definitely highlights that. It puts you in a trance, and everything from the cinematography to the editing, to the actual just the use of slow motion and things like that, and the blurring of the lights and everything like that. It's just it does that, and as well there's certain shots where for example, where De Niro looks at the the drink that he's got, and the fizzle, bubbles coming up, and stuff like that. It just puts you into under this spell, and gets you in the mind of De Niro, you know, in that sense as well, because you know his reality becomes more and more altered over the film. You know, the more he becomes, you know, unhinged and stuff. The way that the film, cinematography and everything plays into that, you know, it works in parallel, which is just perfectly done. You know, the film starts off, you know, it gradually introduces you to this character of De Niro, and you know, there's different side characters, of course. You know, people work at the taxi, you know, as taxi drivers as well, and you know, there's conversations. Just you know, when I first saw it, it just completely drew me in with these conversations, and you know, just because you know, De Niro plays, you know, Travis Bickle, the character is just one of the most complex in cinema. He plays, yeah, it's just you know, a very awkward character. You know, the way he interacts with these people, and of course, you know, people can notice things and stuff, and it's just very, you know, awkward in that sense. And but I think De Niro, just the acting in this film is on another level. Just the way that he can play this guy, you know. Of course, in real life, he was quite nervous and that at that time, but this is just a performance as well. The way it progresses, you know, over the film, it's something else, you know. And by the end of the film, it's really off the charts. But it's a highly subtle performance as well in places, and it's just, you know, it just sucks you in, and you relate to this character so much, you know. Of course, he does strange things, you know, but you know, there's things that he kind of, you know, the views that he has is very relatable. You know, of course, the script plays into that, but just, you know, as well, just the way he acts with certain things and stuff. And but yes, the way his views in the film, you know, of course, the famous, you know, lines where he says, you know, all the animals come out at night and stuff, and wish the rain would wash all the scum off the street. And how can you not really relate to that? Well, I can personally. You know, it's true. You know, a lot of the time that is the case, and just what you know, he's saying is just, you know, he's kind of a guy just trying to get along and stuff, and you know, it just kind of says a lot about, you know, a lot of scumbags and stuff. And it's something, yeah, just instantly I connected with, you know, and I always have done, because, you know, I kind of, yeah, you know, there's a lot of trouble and stuff in places and that, and just crime and everything that you kind of, you of course you can relate to that, you know, the fact that he's just trying to get by, and there's all these people, you know, and of course Harvey Keitel's in the film. He plays this pimp basically, Jodie Foster's character Iris, and you know, he's a despicable character, and he's one of the people that highlight that, you know, this kind of vigilante against crime kind of thing that Travis Bickle, you know, kind of goes for. And yeah, Harvey Keitel is stunning in this film. You know, a fairly small part. You know, most of the people are quite small parts, because it is mainly De Niro that you follow. And of course, Jodie Foster was very young in this film. She was great, really great. A character you could feel sorry for as well. And of course, eventually De Niro's character kind of tries to help her and stuff out of this prostitution that she's in. And you know, some of the stuff that, you know, it's very hard hitting, you know, very powerful stuff. And you know, this sort of stuff did and still does happen, you know, and it's really sad. But yeah, it's just very powerful the way that's done, and just really warm the way that Travis character kind of tries to help her and stuff. You know, and you in that sense, you know, he's a very complex character, because there's things in the film, of course, that he does and feels as well. There is obviously stuff I don't agree with in that. But then there's things where he was trying to help out this character of Iris, where he does kind of stand against sort of crime in general. And, you know, he's kind of just a very likeable person, you know, a very likeable character, and a very sympathetic one, you know, and that's all to do with the script and the performance, of course, as well. It's just wonderful. The way I'm, you know, able to kind of get in this character's shoes as well, even though, of course, he's you know, very isolated and stuff, because kind of, yeah, you can relate to that, of course. Surely at some point in everyone's lives you've felt like that. Of course, this is to the extreme, of course, and you know, just the way it progresses from the small kind of gestures at the beginning, and yeah, just the weird actions and any, you know, the disconnect that he has in the conversations and everything, and then all the way leading up to when he, absolutely goes, insane at the end, kind of thing. Not insane, but yeah, you kind of like that. And of course, I won't get into things if no one's seen it, but many famous images, of course, which you can kind of guess what things that happen. But this is just one of the most masterful character studies I've ever seen, and it just it's absolutely perfect. But it's beyond that, it goes beyond a checklist film. It is just stunning. The soundtrack as well is wonderful. The score by Bernard Herrmann. This would be his last score, I believe, or one of his last. And he's of course known for North by Northwest, Psycho, Vertigo. Many scores that was just some of the best in film. Full stop. I still think probably Vertigo is his best score. It is one of the most feeling, and I think probably the best used in a film that he's composed. But this is just one of the best film scores. I think it adds to that trance effect, that the dreamlike feel that the film has. And of course as well, just the way it's used, it's timed perfectly throughout the film, and it kind of as well, the kind of some of it has like this seedy feel to kind of highlight this kind of scummy streets and everything. And as well, this film, a lot of it is set at night, and it's just perfectly captured. This kind of the warmth of being in the taxi and stuff, but also the stuff that happens at night. All the crime and that tends to happen at night, and it's so well done. So well portrayed. The soundtrack, of course, adds to this, and it kind of, it is perfectly captured nighttime in this film. And just of course the cinematography, just some of the best I've ever seen. I still think Raging Bull has the best cinematography for sure in a Scorsese film, and editing. That is off the charts. That's probably one of the 20 best cinematography in film. But this is not far off in that sense. Just the way that Scorsese kind of puts you in, as I say, into this dreamlike feel, and you get lost in these ongoing, journeys in the car and stuff, and just sort of the narration as well. Of course, how can you forget that? It just works so well. It's perfect. Probably one of the top 10 best narrations in film. It really puts you in the mind of Travis, this character. Of course, there's loads of things that aren't through the narration, because it is kind of his point of view. Stuff that, of course, you just see visually, which is perfect. You get kind of everything you need to know about this character through them two things. And of course, there's a very, very ambiguous ending. I won't get into. I'll maybe do an analysis of the ending, at some point, an analysis of just other scenes in general. But the ending, you might not, if you first watch it, you might not actually think it is ambiguous, because it may seem, definite, in some sense. But when you actually think about it, and there's many different things that it can mean, and just things that you'd think, how that would that happen in the context of the story? So catch on to that and try and figure out what it means, because it's not all that it seems. I don't think, and of course, it's been on record that's the case. I think I've kind of, I kind of have my own thoughts on that, which will be interesting to explain, in an analysis video. But it's just an absolutely wonderful. It's really one of the most perfect pieces of art in cinema. It's just one of the best films I've ever seen. One of the absolute best. It's just a film that I relate to on every level, really. It portrays isolation so well, better than most films have ever done. It's one of the best performances by De Niro. The supporting cast are wonderful. Sybil Shepherd as well. She's great, and this romance, a very complex one that happens quite early on. Very, very powerful stuff. Kind of just adds to the sympathy you feel for De Niro's character as well. And just everything from the cinematography to the editing, it's just wonderful. The direction is just flawless. I cannot, it's just, there's not a single flaw with this film for me. But it just elevates to such a level, I feel, that it has to receive my absolute highest rating. And of course, if you've kind of seen my channel a bit, you'll know that is 100% plus, tier S. And it was just in there. And that is the highest praise I can ever give a film. Tier 1, and Tier 1s are ones that, films that are still some of the very finest films. But this is like a bonus tier, as I've explained many times. This is ones that really are the magnum opuses of cinema. I definitely feel this film is. It's an indie film that, of course, now is very, very, mainstream and stuff. That's just because of how good it is. It's one of the best films of the 70s for sure. All the supporting cast as well: Harvey, Keitel, Jodie Foster. Just all perfect in this film. But it's just, I think it's one of the most moving and realistic character studies I've ever seen in cinema, and the themes that Scorsese explores are just so well executed in this film. It's just a perfect film. There's nothing to flaw, but it just goes beyond. It's just mind blowing, this film. It's just constant vision. It's completely perfectly paced and everything like that. It just unfolds with such a flow, and the way the camera just flows as well. It's very, very graceful and everything, but then there's very, very sharp edits at times, and stuff. It's the kind of shock and stuff, and just that combination is very, very has like a jarring effect at times, which is in the best ways. But as well, it kind of puts you in this dream state through the way the camera flows. It's just so perfect, the way this film is shot and edited. And De Niro is just a master in this film. One of the best performances that he's ever given, anyone's ever given. The fact that this isn't even in his top 3 best performances, maybe, but it's still in the top 20 of all time. That just shows how good he is. I think he's the greatest actor, of all time. I'd say there's probably 3 performances that are better than this, and probably 3 or 4 films that are better than this that he's in actually as well. And it's still in my top, easily into my top 60 films of all time. It gets my highest rating, and it is a dreamlike, hard-hitting, extremely powerful and emotional film that just, it's highly relatable, as I've said, and every element of filmmaking is just put to a level that it's almost unmatched. Very, very few films get to this level. And many, of course, to wrap up, many say that this is his best. It's very hard, over the years. There's these 3 films, I've got them here. Of course, Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, which is 4K, and Raging Bull. Many people kind of debate over which is the best of these 3 films. I will say none of these 3 are my favourite Scorsese film. But, the fact this could be my favourite of the 3, but as I've said many times, and I always do say, Raging Bull, I think at the moment, is probably his best of the 3, and maybe his best film that he's ever done. We'll get to that very, very soon. That'll be rewatched and reviewed very, very soon, and Goodfellas, of course, as well. But, these 2 films in particular, the De Niro performances and just the collaboration that they had, him and Scorsese, is just on another level, and you take your pick really with these sort of films because they're all some of the best in film. There's a spoiler, but Taxi Driver is just something else. It's one of my most beloved films, and Scorsese, overall, just there was a time where he'd be in my top 3 directors quite a few years ago. He's still in my top 10 and forever will be. He's pretty high in that top 10, and he's one of the guys that kind of, just kind of made me realise over the years that I want to be a filmmaker and everything like that, and just kind of defined many years in my childhood, kind of. So yes, if you haven't seen this film, there's not much high praise I can give this film. Check it out. It's wonderful, and you'll be blown away, hopefully. And yes, thanks for watching my review, and more will be up of Scorsese. I don't have to re-watch all the ones that I've done this year. So there might be some, just pump some out, Mean Streets and stuff like that. I watched again early this year. I did watch one that I didn't like at all, but yeah, that'll maybe not be quite yet. But this month is my birthday month, and I'm going to be watching, just quickly before we wrap up, there's about for 2 weeks at least, there's going to be a bunch of films that are very high on my favourite films list that I'll be watching and rewatching and reviewing. And you know, the examples: Gone with the Wind, you know, City Lights. Of course, some of the Scorseses. So look forward to that. And of course, I finally got the Blu-ray collection of Mission Impossible. Haven't got the 4K because that was really, really expensive at the moment. But yes, all 5 of them. I've seen them all. I just need to rewatch them, and I'll be reviewing them probably this week, some of them. So look forward to that. And then I'll go and see Mission Impossible Fallout, which I cannot wait. But yes, thanks for watching my review of Scorsese's Taxi Driver.